What's going on, guys? Welcome into another episode of Bogey Free. This week we are coming at you with some Arnold Palmer Invitational action. No Evan this week. He's busy celebrating his Listener League win, but we'll get into that in a few minutes. Joining me, as always, is Anthony Amico, who you can find on Twitter at Amixta. What's going on, man? How we doing?
Doing good. I'm looking forward to the Arnold Palmer. I just want public service announcement. Just stop calling it the API because it just confuses the crap out of me. People are talking about APIs on my Twitter feed, and I'm like, oh, there's data. Where are we pulling data from, guys? And then
I
I'm like, oh no, it's a tournament.
I specifically in the tweet for the show put API just to piss you off.
I know it. You're such a troll. It's incredible.
So besides trolling Anthony, we do have a guest on tonight. Mike Alexander, you can follow on Twitter at roto_Wan. That's WAN, like Obi-Wan, I'm assuming.
That's right.
You can find him talking PGA over at the Sweet Spot podcast, and he also does some MMA content over on Fantasy Alarm. What's going on, Mike? How are we doing tonight?
I'm good, man. Just excited to get back into some PGA. I kind of unintentionally took the week off last week. I had a death in the family. It was
sorry.
Pretty good week to take off, though. Things were kind of choppy there.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting week. Obviously, Keith Mitchell coming through with the win there. I guess that could lead us right into this Listener League bullshit. Like, Evan winning is like the ultimate example of like the dumber the farmer, the bigger the potatoes. Like, how this kid lucked into this shit is unbelievable. This stupid takes. I'm so mad that Glover was in the winning lineup. That's really why I'm upset.
For the record, people that are listening are like, "Oh man, that's kind of tough." Like Evan's not even there. Like Matt would say the exact same thing to Evan's face, and he has been saying it in our group chat. I can't confirm. So this is not subtweet. This is not subtweet shade. This is
he knows what's happening. He's fully aware. This is fine. You can't say anything bad about his lineup though. At the end of the week, he had 3 guys in the top 10, and then had 6 of 6. So that's usually a pretty good combination to win a 50-man field. So good on him. He's spending his $112.50 wisely down in Florida, and he's actually going to the Pro-Am tomorrow to watch the API. So if you I don't know. He probably won't tweet anything about it. I'll just tweet what he says in a message to me about it, and you'll get some information from that. Yeah, so that wraps up the Listener League. Like I'm more than happy to move on from this because it was super tilting after all the arguments I had with him last week that he won. So real quick, I'll give a little overview of the course, and then I'll kick it to you guys to tell me what you're looking at as far as stats go and how you're limiting your player pool this week. As usual, the course is Bay Hill. I think it's been there since 1979 or so. It's par 72, 7,400 yards, Bermuda grass greens. And as far as difficulty goes, it kind of ranges. Like over the last 5 or 6 years, it's been anywhere from like a top 10 most difficult to like basically in the 30th most difficult course. So it definitely ranges depending on the weather and other factors. So looks like wind is going to be okay this week. So hopefully we'll get some good scoring conditions and we can see some of these guys go low. Amico, I'll kick it to you first. What are you looking for this week as far as stats go? How are you eliminating guys from your pool?
Well, the 2 big stats that I'm into this week: total strokes gained and strokes gained off the tee. Really important off the tee. I don't necessarily want to conflate that with distance. Like if you're hitting fairways but you're not hitting long, like you can still do pretty well here.
Yeah.
But you have to be gaining strokes off the tee. If you're like hitting into the rough or putting yourself in bad spots, like that's when you get into a lot of trouble here.
Yeah, for sure. As far as like the correlations go, driving distance and driving accuracy both explain about 8% of DraftKings points for the entire field. So it's pretty even, which is kind of rare for it to be sort of like that. Not that 8's high, but for golf, for off the tee stats, it's kind of high. Usually it's in like the 5 range. So for them both to be 8%, like you can definitely, get around this course in a couple of different ways. Mike, what are you focused in on this week? Anything jumping out to you? Things we should be paying attention to?
Yeah, I mean, pretty similar stuff to Anthony there. Long par 5s and long par 4s, I think, are going to be pretty important this week. So I threw those into the model. Personally, I like to filter out putting. So I just do strokes gained putting next to the model. And then that way you eliminate a little bit of the noise, I feel like. And I'm having some fairly good results with that. So you can see, who's going to be a good golfer based on approach and all that stuff. And then, guys who are putters that are good, not good. And a guy like Rory, who is streaky at best, you can say like, okay, everything looks good for Rory this week. He's a GPP play for me because his putting sucks. But that kind of thing.
Yeah, I gotcha. And as far as putting goes, I think for me personally, it's not something that I put too much stock into on a week-to-week basis. Like I'm always looking for guys who are going to hit greens, but with the fact that the first, 5 out of the first 6 events were all on POA, and now we're switching over to Bermuda, like it is important to pay attention to guys who maybe struggled through the California swing just because of their putting, and now they're on Bermuda. Like Keith Mitchell's kind of the poster boy for that right now. Like ultimate, he's an awful putter no matter what the surface is, but like he clearly prefers Bermuda. And he went from 2 or 3 missed cuts in his last 4 events to winning the whole tournament last week. So and
putting's so touch and go for me. Like I don't even really like looking at it. Just on POA or Bermuda, whatever we're on, that's the only thing I really want to look at. Yeah,
exactly. So just a public service announcement there, just to make sure you're not, if you're on Fantasy National or Labs or something, you're not cranking it all the way up to like 90% of your model. So let's jump into a couple of these guys I sent over to you both earlier today. Again, this is sort of the first run of ownership, so things can definitely change. And I think the Tiger withdrawal is probably going to change a couple of things up at the top. But we have Justin Rose at 10-7 this week. Rory is the only golfer above him. But as far as Justin Rose goes, I personally think he's going to see quite a bit of ownership. Obviously, he's been playing well. 3 out of the last 4 have been in the top 10 here, and he's been playing well recently. He's obviously at the top of the rankings right now. So are you willing to eat some chalk with him this week, Mike, or are you thinking he's a good fade candidate?
I mean, my position on Rosie is always that he's a good cash game play. He always stats out well. Like you're never going to find him on a golf course probably not statting well. Right. He putts average on Bermuda from what I looked at. So with some chalk, he's probably, like I said, probably a cash game play for me. I'd rather go right under him and go Ricky, because I feel like Ricky Fowler's pretty hot right now, and he putts pretty well on the Bermuda grass.
Gotcha. What about you, Amico? You eating this chalk or no?
No, I'm actually not. I'm kind of surprised because I'm usually Team Rose. Like I think he's obviously a great golfer. I don't think that takes much explanation, but I don't love playing the guys that like
hot take.
Yeah, right. I don't love playing the guys that like just kind of pick their spots golf wise. Like I like the guys that have been out on the course doing the things. So like as a result, like Rose isn't in like peak form because he's just like playing like once every couple weeks. I agree with Mike on Ricky, but I think like this tier, like in general, I think there's a bunch of different ways you can go. I don't really want to tie myself to Rose all the way, so I probably will. I'll probably be fading.
Yeah, I think as of right now, I have him as the highest in this like 10K and up range, and I don't really feel like paying for that if it's not like some random RBC Canadian Open or something where there's only like one good golfer in the field. Like there's plenty of guys to like up here, which we'll get to in the pivots, obviously. But yeah, I'm pretty comfortable being underweight or just completely fading Rose this week.
Wow.
Yeah, I said it.
Sweep on Rose. Never would have thought it.
I know, right? It's like, yeah, no, don't play the number one golfer in the world. Everything will be fine. The very clear chalk, in my opinion, this week is going to be Bryson. The Alt, think like short circuited his Microsoft Surface or something in Mexico, and he did not play particularly well there. He's obviously been on fire for a really long time, though, and I guess we have to decide: was Mexico more of like a hiccup, or is he burnt out, or is he like what should we do with him this week? I have him right now over 30%, which is pretty wild for a $9,700 golfer. So Amico, I'll kick it to you first. Are you willing to eat that chalk?
Man, I mean, I'm Team Bryson, but I don't think I can do that. Oh, that sucks. 30% is just too high for me. Like
it's wild.
There's very, very few golfers I'm going to play at 30% ownership. Like, I mean, I'm not saying I'll have no Bryson, but like underweight for sure. Still a great cash play. I love building my cash teams with all under 10K golfers. So like, if he's your top guy in that kind of a lineup, I think that's fine. But in tournaments, I think I'm definitely going to be underweight.
Yeah, and I did the ownership projections a little bit differently this week, and I have him at like a 73% chance to be over 20% at least, and then like a 50% chance to be over 30%. So it's definitely, I would be shocked if he came in under like 25, 26% this week. Mike, are you a Team Bryson guy, and are you gonna ride that train this week or no?
I was for a little bit last season, and during the football season, I'm not quite as heavy into golf, and that's when he really like jumped on this wave he's on. And coming back into it at the end of football and seeing the pricing he was at, it's just too much for me for Bryson. And I've been slowly coming around, but as I've been coming around, he's been doing a little worse with the last 2 weeks. So I've always been hesitant on him as he gets into like the top 5 price golfers. I just don't feel like he's there yet. So he doesn't look great stat wise. He looks okay. But if you're telling me he's chalk, I'm always happy to pass on the chalk.
Yeah, that's like insane. That anytime you're approaching like 30% is pretty nuts. Again, outside of like very specific situations. So yeah, I'm with you guys. I'm not particularly sold on him this week. Wouldn't shock me if he did well, obviously, because he's Bryson and he's won 4 out of his last like 10 or 11 starts. So it's not the easiest fade in the world, but that's a lot of ownership, and you definitely put yourself ahead of the game if you fade him and he does poorly. The other guy above like 9K that I think is interesting is Tommy Fleetwood. He, I guess it was 2 years ago, was somewhere in like the 7K range, like relatively not as known as he is now. And he shot 78 to open, and I had like 50% of them. And then he shot 66 to make the cut and finished in the top 10, just like the ultimate GOAT move. So he'll always have a special place in my heart, especially at this event. He looks like he's going to probably be the second highest owned in this range. Mike, what are your thoughts on Fleetwood for this week?
Yeah, I like Fleetwood in more competitive fields. A week like this where you're saying he's definitely going to catch people's eye. He just doesn't put 4 great rounds together ever. Yeah. Obviously there's not as much competition this week with people kind of getting ready for the Masters coming up, but he's another guy I'd probably go a little bit underweight on, to be honest.
What about you, Miko?
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. I mean, I'm a huge Fleetwood fan, but again, like Mike was saying, it's not really the kind of field where I like to play him. The guys at Data Golf have him with the third worst odds to finish inside the top 10 out of all these guys, 9K and above. So not great there in terms of the upside. And that's kind of what I want for a guy whose like cut equity is sometimes questionable. And again, like if you're going to have like that one bad round, I just kind of trust a bunch of these other guys in this range to either not have that round or like somewhere in the other 3 rounds, like really put up a great score. So.
Yeah. He's 6th in my course fit model this week. So I'm just going to have every little bit of Tommy Fleetwood, because if
Nice.
you go 100%, chalk doesn't matter, you know? So that's how I'm rolling this week. I like Fleetwood quite a bit. Yeah, your criticism is absolutely correct. Like the fact that he just can't put 4 legit rounds together. Like if he would have shot 74 a couple of years ago on the first day, he would have won the tournament. Like that's how close he was and how ridiculous the rest of his week was. So
Right.
we
And
know
like
he can. Yeah.
No, like he's fine. Like it's not like he's like he's not Phil. Like Phil, I like if you tell me you're playing Phil, like I just want your action. But like if you're playing Fleetwood, it's like okay, like that's not a terrible play. But like Molinari's like $100 cheaper. You know, like I just
By
it's
the
a lot
way,
harder to rationalize.
did you guys see the groups yet for the tee
I
times?
saw that Brooks is playing
Fucking-
with Bryson, and that's amazing.
Yeah, well, that's one thing, but freaking Molinari they put with like Bryce Garnett and like somebody else, like
Oh yeah, disrespected narrative.
utter disrespect. But we'll get there in the pivots. Let's quickly hit these other two guys that one is probably going to be popular, and one I don't know what the hell to make of them, but I wanted to bring them up because I feel like everybody's going to talk about them, and I wanted your opinion. So Ian Poulter, last 4 starts, 3rd place, 6th place, 3rd place, 6th place. So he's got a little pattern math. Shout out to DFS Jimmy. We used to joke around about that on the show last year. I get it. Like he's obviously been playing well. But again, this is one of those situations where we have to ask ourselves if we're willing to deal with all that ownership. Mike, are you in on Poulter this week or no?
Poulter has kind of come around for me in the last year. Like he was definitely not a friend of the program for me. Just, all of his antics and complaining. I just couldn't stand the guy.
Yeah.
But he went on that tear and you can't let that get in the way of making money. So just because I don't like the guy doesn't mean you shouldn't consider him. So I've come back around on Poulter. Yeah, the model I've put together likes him. So it's definitely not a fade. I don't know if I'd go overweight on a guy like Ian Poulter, but I'm going to mix him in for sure. I think he's probably, if you ignore putting, a top 10 guy in a model.
Yeah, and he's like 8,000 just seems too cheap. Maybe if he was 8,700, we'd have a different conversation at this ownership. But I think 8,000 is pretty low for him the way he's playing recently. Yeah, I personally I feel like I started hating him early, and then everybody started hating him, and I decided that I was going to like him because just too many people, it was just the cool kid thing to do.
Yep.
To hate him all the time. So I was just like, fuck it, I'll root for the guy. As long as it's not the Ryder Cup, who cares?
Right. Yeah, and I mean, his putting is sucked here. If he figures out how to, sink a putt, he could do pretty well. It's his ball striking's great. He's just not getting it done on the greens.
Yeah, exactly. He definitely goes with his as his putter goes. Amico, you're in on Poulter, right? I can see you chomping at the bit right now.
Oh, I mean, just inject it directly into my veins. He's a top golfer for me in terms of cash play. Doesn't grade out as high in tournaments, but still really good for an 8K play. Just too cheap for the current form. I'm not saying he's a weekly top 10 guy like he has been, but I like guys that are in a good rhythm. I think that he has really good cut equity for that price. That's something I really care about in cash contests. And to a lesser, at that price, at 8K, I care about cut equity a ton. He doesn't have to go win the tournament for me at that price. Just give me a T20 or something. I'm not too displeased with that.
Right.
Hasn't done better than 40th since 2015 here, which is whatever. But if he gets rolling with the putter, he could definitely have a big week. Like the upside, like all the stuff I'm getting from Data Golf on him over at Daily Roto. So I'm feeling good. In terms of current form, he's the best golfer in the field for me. And even though he hasn't had the high finishes, his course history is still decent just because he's played and he's made all the cuts. So.
Yeah. I mean, he's consistently made cuts there. It's not like he's one of these guys who, just seemingly can't figure it out on a course. Like, he's making cuts. He's been up there sometimes, but not as much recently. And course history is bullshit anyway, so who really cares, right? Just had to throw that in. Sorry. Speaking of course history is bullshit, Matt Every is $7,400, a multiple winner of this event, back to back. I guess it was 4 and 5 years ago. Like, what the hell? Like, Mike, are you interested in having any Every shares? Like, I know people are going to bet outrights on them, and sure, I guess you could do that if you like lighting money on fire. But what about for DFS?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not completely a guy who ignores course history, but I fall in the same camp. I don't think course history is as important as people make it out to be, especially when you look at his. Like, it's not consistent top tens. He's got as many missed cuts as he does wins. Yeah. It's not that profile of like, this guy is a horse here and you can't go wrong betting on him. Like, if he misses the cut and he's chalk, your lineups are just lit on fire. So I'm going to pass on Every.
What about you, Amico? He's not doing all the things for you.
No, easiest fade of the week. Listen, the guys want me money in Showdown, but I'm not playing him in a 4-round full event. Like, if you just look at what Data Golf says, like, they have him with like basically a 56% chance to make the cut, and it's by far the lowest of guys in his range. Like, to find someone lower with worse cut equity, you have to go all the way to 6,900 with Harris English.
There's so many better guys in this range, which we'll get to in a minute. But for what it's worth, the few starts that he's had recently, he's been putting together a couple of top 20s in his last 3 starts on the PGA Tour, and he's been playing well as far as his web starts as well. So it wouldn't shock me if he made a cut here, but I think this was more of just a joke to bring him up because he's not even going to be the highest in like the 7K range. So all right, before we hop into the pivot section of the show, I want to remind you guys you can get into the Listener League. It is posted. We're about, I guess, I don't know, almost a quarter of the way full now. 50 guys and ladies, sorry, $5 to get in. Top 3 pay out. Link will be in the iTunes description and on my Twitter. Maybe Anthony, if he throws me a retweet one of these days.
I retweet you. Don't. Whoa, no. I object. Instant objection.
Okay, so if Evan retweets it, you can find him on Evan's page too. All right, let's hop into some pivots now. I think this is a very interesting week as far as some guys who will either be like mildly owned or just pretty ignored. As far as 9,500 and up, so from Leishman up to Rory, Mike, are there 1 or 2 guys that we haven't talked about that you're interested in getting some exposure to? I know you mentioned Ricky before. You want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, Ricky's playing really well lately. He putts really well. He always performs well in Florida. I don't know if I'd call him a pivot. Like, I think people are going to be on him. And he's the 3rd most expensive golfer. So, it's not like you're digging deep here. The other guy I'm looking at is Jason Day. He just putts really well on Bermuda grass. And I feel like he's been under the radar most of this season. Hasn't played a ton. But he's the kind of guy that can win any tournament that he's in.
Yeah, for sure. As far as ownership goes in this range, like from Leishman up, right now I have Leishman and Fowler as the 2 lowest in this range, but it's relatively flat. It's not, you're not going to get them at like 8% or anything.
Right.
But yeah, I definitely hear you on that. Amico, who are you?
Surprising on Leishman with what he's done here recently.
Yeah, and again, this is like the first run, so he could get some buzz over the next day or so as more shows come out and more articles get published. But like I said, it typically goes pretty flat in this range.
Right.
Again, with exceptions, like I think Bryson is gonna be super owned, but for the most part, this range usually goes from like 13 to 28% or something like that. So there's not a wild spread usually. Amico, what are you thinking?
I'm going all the way up, baby. Rory. I mean, it just feels like no one's talking about the fact that he has 4 straight top fives. Like, I don't. Maybe it's just because people don't like him because he's kind of a dick. But like, I feel like no one's talking about Rory, and he shouldn't be too sneaky. I mean, he won it last year, so it's not like he's not gonna be on the radar of like the course history folk and all that stuff. But I mean, Rory is a perfect fit. He's first in total strokes gained. He's first in strokes gained off the tee. He's killing the ball, and he's only slightly more expensive, really. I mean, for me, $700 in this field isn't terrible. I'll pay it over Rose to get to Rory. He's my top tournament play in the field, and even when like I adjust for salary, he grades out. Salary and odds and all that stuff. Like he grades out really well, which doesn't usually happen for me for the top price golfer in the field. So really strong indication for me that Rory is an elite play.
Yeah, and don't you feel like the top price golfer has gone under-owned most of this season? Like I don't know, people are just comfortable with the values or what, but you tell me if you feel the same.
Yeah, I mean, except for like the one DJ week, I feel like.
Right, yeah, and that definitely happens. I think really dating back to like all the way through last year, like I said before, with the exception of those random weeks where there's like one guy in the top 20 that's actually in the field, like it's people always say they're going to pay for the guy and then don't. Like it always kind of, they always come in a little bit lower than you'd anticipate. So, that $700 between Rose and Rory could make a difference for some people. I don't think the pricing is that tight where you really have to make a decision. Like if you like Rory, just pay for Rory. Like it's not, I don't know. I don't think it's that tight. So yeah, I fully agree on Rory there. He's just playing too well right now. He's I think second in my model. So yeah, I'm gonna play a fair bit of Rory this week. I can kind of see myself, if I end up building like 50 lineups this week, trying to kind of match the field as far as ownership goes in this range in general. Is the overweight on any of these guys this week. So I guess we'll see what happens as the week progresses. But let's hop down to this next range, which I think is a little bit more interesting. So from Hideki up at 9,300 all the way down to, well, we talked about Poulter, so down at 8,000. Amico, what do you got? You know there's one answer here, so just act accordingly.
Oh gosh. Well, I don't want to take your answer. How about that? I mean, you're gonna say Kokrak probably.
The GOAT.
And I'm gonna let you talk about him. So that's how big of a mensch I am. No, but I really like Dekibot. I mean, I think again, like he seems completely over the injury stuff. He's playing good golf. So I like Decky. I also like Billy Ho, man. I mean, I just, again, professional golfer, professional cup maker, someone who has, again, like I think a little more upside than meets the eye. Yeah. And the two kings, I mean, I really love this range, so I'm just going to quick mention two other guys. Chucky Three Sticks, who is just an always play for me, and your boy Keegan.
We're really going to have to talk off air about this Keegan bullshit that you keep bringing up.
Listen, the last time I touted Keegan, he was really good.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, I'm with you on Billy. If Jason Rouseland didn't break him last week, heading into Saturday, he might have been right in the mix there. So I don't know if you guys caught that. He had he was all up in his mentions talking to people on DFS Twitter on Friday night, which was kind of a weird move, but
love it.
Just so weird.
Go with your gut. Just go.
Yeah, so Kokrak is third in my model this week for course fit, down at 8,300. So I'm just going to keep playing him until he proves me otherwise. With you on Howell as well. Evan would want us to mention Lucas Glover.
Nah, dude, bro. The point of the show is to get through the whole show without mentioning. Fuck Lucas Glover.
But like I said, right? I'm gonna be pretty heavy on Fleetwood, like I mentioned in the beginning, and pretty heavy on Kokrak. So I don't really see myself going too far off the reservation there. I think I'm gonna try and dial in there a little bit. What about you, Mike? Who are you liking?
Yeah, I mean, all those guys are looking pretty good to me. I like Molinari a good bit. His ball striking is really solid. If he can putt, of course, that's kind of the one thing you got to worry with him. Yeah. Henrik Stenson's stats out great, but that's a bit of a wild card with where he's been lately. Not really making cuts, so to speak. But he's going to turn it around at some point. He has to. He's too good of a golfer not to just miss cuts continuously.
Yeah, he's an interesting one. I feel like I think it was 2 years ago he was like the most expensive guy in the field and just completely ejected. Like he was hitting balls out of the water in his underwear. Like it was a whole thing. So that wasn't ideal for people who owned him.
And that was like in the wrist injury.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And the food poisoning in Mexico.
Right. It was. I think it was the week after that, or 2 weeks after that. So yeah, I can definitely see that. I would love for him to sort of get back in the mix and push some of these guys up at the top. But I guess we'll see. We'll see how he does this week. Jumping down to the $7,000 range, fan favorite Luke List right up at the top, and then there's just everybody else, right? Like just head and shoulders above everybody, or no, Mike? What are you thinking in the 7K range?
I mean, he might be a little chalky, but Zach Johnson, really good here, good history, stats well, 7,700. That's a great price for him. For me, also really like RCB, Rafa Cabrera-Bello. He doesn't blow you away in any one arena, but he's just such a solid golfer in a field like this. I think he could easily top 10.
Yeah, 7,500 is egregious for him. Like the fact that he's $100 more than Matt Every is just obviously a mistake in the DK algorithm, because I don't get that at all. I will be fully in on RCB this week. Even Hao Tong Lee being the same price as him, like I feel like Hao Tong Lee has like infinite amounts more upside, and Ben Yan is right there too. Like that little cluster there, I think you could see at least one or two of those guys in the top 10 at the end of the week. Amico, how about you?
Yeah, with you on Benny On and ZJ. What do you guys think of Hadwin? Because he's popping for me a little bit, and he's the same price as ZJ. Where do you guys stand on Hadwin, he of the plus 1,000 a couple weeks ago, versus Zach Johnson?
I mean, I get it. I just never find my way to like rostering him for whatever, like for better or worse. I think the price is reasonable. But I think him being right next to RCB like that, I'm probably just going to gravitate more towards Cabrera-Bello. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I have a hard time getting Hadwin right. I'd rather play ZJ or RCB there for sure.
Anybody else that you're targeting in here, Amico? How about a little bit lower? I know we didn't talk about any of these guys down here yet.
I mean, if you want to go lower, I know you mentioned Hao Tong Lee. I mean, if you want to go lower, I guess I could see Sneds, just because he's gonna gain strokes by hitting fairways. Like he's not gonna hit it far, but he's a guy that's gonna keep himself in play on most holes to score. So I guess him. Again, Sneds is always. I feel like I've mentioned this a couple times all year. This year, and we haven't actually had a spot. This is kind of the spot where like people aren't on Sneds because it's not like a perfect course fit, but he could actually go really low. So I think that's probably a good play.
Yeah, Seneca's one of those guys that just sort of does well regardless of, whatever your perceived course fit for him would be. Like he'll do well on long courses that you wouldn't necessarily has a shot on. So I can get behind some Snedeker at like probably 5% ownership. That'd be a pretty enticing play down there. As far as other guys above, in this low 7,000 range, I think that that Steve Stricker could make a little bit of sense.
I was just gonna say, Stricker. We have on the sweet spot the obligatory old guy mention of the week, and Strickers this week.
You got to do it. Hopefully VJ was last week then.
Right.
And then Sungjae Im, like everybody's gonna roll their eyes. I'm just gonna keep beating this drum until he wins something. I think it was interesting to see, you know, how his week turned out last week. Like Saturday, well, heading into Saturday, I felt like a jackass for saying that I wasn't gonna play him, and I think he was the 36-hole leader, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And then he almost MDF'd and shot 77 on Saturday. So,
which is really surprising for him because his reputation is like as a grinder and somebody who just keeps their nose down. So that's pretty surprising that he did that.
Yeah. So I was a little worried that maybe he had some injury that he was dealing with, but Sunday he shot 71. So I don't think it was, I really think he just lost it a little bit. I mean, to say the least, but he just couldn't get any putts to go in. He didn't have a single birdie on Saturday. So he just, from the start, he just lost his mind. What about below 7,000? There's nobody down here that's really going to get terribly popular, but is there anybody who's popping for you down here, Mike?
You got the Gooch down here, Taylor Gooch at 6,800. He looks like an okay play. He can putt a little bit on Bermuda. Reasonably well here, ball striking wise previously.
I like it. What about you, Amico? Any dart throws down here?
Well, I'm sure you're going to tell us all about how Stuart Sink's a great play. But I'm in on CT Pan at 6,800. Just getting to be a little bit more reliable as a cut maker. I know he missed a cut last week, but prior to that, he was on a good run. Sub 7K, just give me the made cut. I feel pretty good with that. And Party Marty, 6,700. He's done pretty well here. I mean, I know you're not into the course history, but I feel like we got to fish a little bit when we're, mining for sub 7K guys. He hasn't missed a cut here ever. He's made 9 in a row, 10 in a row. Like, so I just at least feel good about the cut equity for Marty this week.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. If not for a little bit of a shaky Sunday, I think Harold Varner would be a little bit more popular this week. At his price, 6,900 is very reasonable. I think I don't know, sort of the same thing with Neiman. Like he just couldn't string birdies together. Like he played reasonably well, he putt pretty well, but he just couldn't really get it rolling the right way and get hot. So I'll always take a couple stabs at those guys because I think when they click, the upside is pretty legit with them. Full agree with you on Gooch. Outside of that, like I just don't really feel the need to go any lower than those guys. Like I feel like I can maybe stack those two guys and pay up if I want to, or go pretty balanced in like my lineups this week. So I don't think I'm going to go too crazy, trying to catch lightning in a bottle down here. Anybody else that we haven't mentioned before we hit the cash locks and get out of here? All good?
Yeah.
Getting the Matic Nah wave right now. All right. So let's kick it to you first, Amico, for your 2 cash locks.
Oh, yeah, you went first to a whopping 1 week in a row.
It's been like 3 weeks.
But I'm locking in Poulter and I'm locking in Chucky 3 Sticks. Those, brand play for me with Howell, and I just think Poulter's in a great spot.
Going pretty cheap there. That's ballsy. I like it. I'm not gonna do that shit, but I like it. It's smart. Mike, what about you? I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot or if I mentioned this or not, but who are 2 guys you're fully in on this week?
Yeah, I mean, I agree on Hal. He's just like almost a guaranteed made cut. For me, RCB, there's a little hesitation because he doesn't have course history, but I don't see him missing this cut. It's a smaller field, but it's still the cut's at 70. So, for me, 7,500 is just a steal. And then ZJ, it's at 7,700. Like those are going to be the foundation of my cash lineups. You get a really good shot at making cuts with some savings, and then you can go up from there into the mid range and the expensive players.
I like it. Real quick before I give my two guys, I also wanted to mention Corey Connors. If you really want to go all the way down, like 6,300, I know he hasn't played particularly well recently. Like he's on a string of a bunch of missed cuts, but he hasn't been far off. Like if you look through his scorecards, it's been like a blow up hole here or there, and he's the story is very different on him. But he is definitely not my cash block. I will. I'm just gonna keep. I was gonna say Rory, but now that you guys picked like only 8K guys, I guess I can't really do that. Definitely going 100% on Fleetwood, and I'm definitely going 100% on Kokrak in my actual real life lineups. So I guess those two would be my guys. All right, geez, guys, we flew through this. Thanks for joining us tonight, Mike. Appreciate it on short notice since Evan is out on a yacht somewhere in Florida.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys.
Of course, man. And again, make sure you follow Mike over on @roto_Juan, and check out all the work that he's doing on multiple sports. I'm a one-trick pony. He does lots of different sports, so make sure you're following along. And as always, Anthony, it's been a pleasure. Appreciate you, bud.
You're okay.
Yep.
You're all right. We'll get you to like I got another month to get you to like baseball. That's my mission.
Oh no, I'm gonna be fully in on the Mets this year. We already talked about this. It's fine.
Okay.
I just don't understand. Like, I don't know anybody on any other team. So playing fantasy baseball probably isn't the best idea for me.
No, it's all math. You don't need to know the players. It's fine.
All right. Well,
especially best ball.
All right. So fine. Now I'm gonna have to play some best ball. So yeah, thanks again, guys. This is a good show. Make sure you follow along with us on Twitter, like I mentioned. Make sure you hop into the listener league this week. We beat all the other listener leagues in 6 of 6 percentage last week, so let's keep that rolling over on Cut Sweats. So put in some good lineups, guys, and good luck this week. See ya.
Peace.